What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Modern Goonies Cinema, where we analyze and review movies and TV. I'm your host, Trevor. So today I want to do something a little bit different and do a quick review of the movie Babylon. Spoilers ahead. So I'm going to call this a quick take segment, and I think I'm going to reserve these for movies and TV that didn't quite capture my attention enough to do like a full-length review, but I still want to talk about. So I'm not going to add a bunch of clips of the film and really go in depth like I normally would. I'm just going to give my overall thoughts with a minimal amount of edits. So my girlfriend and I just went to see Babylon at the one theater that was still showing it 2 months after it released. And I was pretty excited going into it because it's written and directed by Chazelle, which is the same guy who did Whiplash, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. But I did know to be a little wary because I was seeing mixed reviews online, and typically that means that the movie's going to be kind of eh. And yeah, after watching, I have to say that this movie is pretty fucking strange. So first off, this movie is fucking gross. And I don't mean that in any kind of like woke way. I mean that there are several scenes in this film that are quite literally just disgusting. Like, within the first 5 minutes, there's a scene of an elephant just shitting all over a man, and they leave no detail to the imagination. I mean, you literally see the elephant's asshole like open up so that it can defecate all over this poor dude. And it's just a sight to behold. And that's not the end by a long shot. There's a scene of a man getting pissed on, like in the mouth and all. People are constantly fucking in the background. There's a snake bite that's like pooling with blood that another character has to suck out the venom bit by bit, rats being eaten alive, a character constantly hogging loogies, and multiple scenes of people violently vomiting, even on other characters. And when it comes to movies, I am all about the grotesque. Movies with a bunch of excess happen to be some of my favorite, like Wolf of Wall Street or really anything by Tarantino. But this much was too much, like even for me. And it's not lost on me that I'm sure this was probably part of the point, but even fucking still, man. So this movie is pretty much the definition of all style over substance. It's a very beautiful movie as far as cinematography goes. And it's really fun to get to see this era of early Hollywood that's not really explored all that often. But it seems like it gets really caught up in the decadence and excess of the era and not really on the characters that experience it. For instance, the whole first half hour of this film is just us witnessing this insane party that's going on. A party sequence that lasts an entire half hour. So the movie goes by and I don't really find myself connecting with any of the characters. Just as you really focus on one character, it switches its perspective to another, and it leaves the previously focused character in the background for a pretty long amount of time, only to then jump back over to them after a large time jump has occurred. So we're missing a lot of context of their progression as a character with years of their life missing. It's just trying to do way too much at once, so it really leaves you being disconnected from everyone in the film. That's not to say that the movie is not entertaining, because it certainly is, but I'm really only enjoying the pure chaos and the magic of making a movie in the early 20s. And not really much else. There's not really a linear plot line to follow, and what tiny bit of a thread that is running through the whole thing seems really underdeveloped. The cast is really good, there's no denying that. I mean, everyone gives a fantastic performance throughout, and they're all very entertaining to watch. But it feels like a lot of these very recognizable faces were just thrown into roles without really having much to contribute at all. For instance, the guy from The Handmaid's Tale is in here, and he's a fantastic actor, but he's kind of just a background character the whole time, and he's framed in this way like he's someone super important, but he doesn't really contribute anything. And then Olivia Wilde pops up for like a minute and then is never seen again the rest of the movie. And the same can almost be said about Tobey Maguire. He doesn't show up until the very end of the film, and then he leaves it pretty much just as fast as he comes into it. And it's a shame because I feel like his performance was actually my favorite of the entire film. It is really entertaining to see him play such an eccentric character. But aside from being a random loan shark that's just tacked on at the end, he really doesn't do much. And his whole subplot was such a strange addition to the story anyways. Like, the whole time the movie's trying to make this point of this moral decay of the time period and the characters involved as they navigate the early machine that is this Goliath of Hollywood. And then it suddenly switches gears to where Manny now has to pay off this loan shark in order to protect Nellie. But instead of being some quick bit, this is an entire sequence of the movie. Tobey Maguire takes Manny all the way to this BDSM club on the outskirts of LA which looks like a sewer, and he literally says it's the asshole of LA. And he does this just so he can specifically show the protagonist this muscle-bound dude who is known for eating rats alive. And then as he's taking him through this really strange place, there's a fucking crocodile just chained to the wall of the sewer area, which the protagonist will later cut free so that it can aid his escape as he's running out. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Shit just goes off the rails insanely fast, and it's not just some funny moment that passes. This random ass chain of events ruins the lives of two of the main characters and gets a few other random ones killed. Seriously, this chain of events effectively ends the film. It doesn't end immediately following this, but it puts our characters in the final positions that we see them in. So it has a direct impact on the plot, but it's just so ridiculous and out of left field that it's really hard to take seriously. But then again, I guess that's kind of the shtick of this whole movie. And then pretty much immediately following this, the film officially ends on some Space Odyssey-like acid trip of all of these famous movie moments. And it flashes before your eyes in a totally incomprehensible clusterfuck that slowly drives you insane, and you're just praying for the movie to end so that you can be put out of your fucking misery. Which is something else too. You never really know when this movie is going to end. It's like the concept of kill your darlings just wasn't applied to this film at all. There are several moments that would be perfect movie endings, but they just keep going past that to give you a little bit more, only for it to end immediately following this acid trip. So by then, the movie sits at a little over 3 hours, and you can really feel it at that point. I feel like the movie tried really hard to say something profound about the decadence and eventual decline of this era, but it spread itself so thin that a lot of things are very underdeveloped. I mean, don't get me wrong, it has the foundation of a really good story. These movie stars at their behemoth heights of early Hollywood, only for the industry to shift to talking pictures, forcing the actors into a whole new medium for which they're underprepared, and for the times to shift away from gluttonous excess to being more morally focused, leaving all of these characters completely out of touch with this new world by the end. But its decision to have so many of these elements at once leaves a lot to be desired, and for a lot of these good plot points to come out half-baked. If the movie had only really focused on 1 to 2 of these characters and how they navigated the times, then I feel like the story would have had a much more meaningful impact. Like, in real life, all of this debauchery of early Hollywood was eventually phased out because of the Hays Code being enacted, which really put a lot of restrictions and censorship on Hollywood as a whole. And you can tell that this has clearly had a background impact on the movie, but it's just never mentioned at all. And adding this just would have been such a great inclusion to the film, where it would really highlight how these characters are being left behind by the world. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are really left to be desired from this film, and I feel like it really fell flat. I feel like Chazelle really put his heart and soul into this movie, because I can really feel that from watching it, but I just don't think he hit his mark this time. This is definitely no Whiplash, and it's really a shame because I was very excited to see this movie, and I really wanted to like it. It's not a bad movie by any means, and it's definitely a lot more entertaining than a lot of films that I've seen in theaters in the last few years, but it's really not anything special either. But that's just what I think. Go out and give it a watch for yourself and come to your own conclusion. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning into the first episode of Modern Goonies Quick Take, and keep an eye out for an $18.99 video that'll be out in the next month or so. I've been Trevor, and I'll see you next time.